Alrighty, YouTube, Niner Empire, what is going down? Welcome back to another video. So 6 players are being ruled out for appearing in this Week 18 season finale versus the LA Rams. Now, we already know about McCaffrey, of course. He's got the mild calf strain. He could very well play in this game if he wanted to, but the Niners, just for cautionary, or just to be cautious, are ruling him out. Again, they don't need him to play either. This game means nothing, so I'm glad that he's kind of ruled out, and he'll obviously get that 3 weeks of rest, which is pretty scary for a guy like Christian McCaffrey to be able to recover for that long before playing again in the playoffs. So good luck to all the potential defenses we'll play in the playoffs. Christian McCaffrey on 3 weeks of rest is going to be tough for any opposing defense. But along with McCaffrey, Arik Armstead, Ross Dwelley, Ambry Thomas, Jair Brown, and Tashaun Gipson have all been ruled out from appearing in the Week 18 game. With Arik Armstead, it's the same thing that's kind of been that he's been dealing with for the past almost 5 weeks now. He's got the foot and knee injury. John Lynch talked with KNBR earlier this week, I believe just yesterday, actually, Friday morning, and he basically went on and kind of mentioned how the hope is that Arik Armstead will be returning for the playoffs, but he can't, guarantee that yet because there's certain markers in his recovery process that he has to hit, which is, it makes sense. But he mentioned how Arik Armstead, it's killing Arik Armstead not to be out there on the field with, and playing with his teammates. Arik Armstead's dealing with something pretty serious, clearly. I mean, he's been ruled out for a month now. This will be, 4 straight games where Arik Armstead has not played. It sucks because our defense is much better, and our run defense especially is much better with Arik Armstead out there. But, you can't rush a guy like Arik Armstead back too fast because you can, obviously get that chance of re-aggravating that foot or knee or, something along the lines of that. But at the end of the day, I really hope Arik Armstead's able to play in these playoff games because, again, the defensive line's not as tough with Arik Armstead being out, and just the defense all in all. Like when Arik Armstead's on the field, this defense is better, and it's really the same with any other key starter that the 49ers would have. It's the same as like Javon Hargrave being out. Like the defensive line, it's not as fierce and it's not as reckless without Arik Armstead on the field. So, that's something we're just going to have to continue to monitor. And I mean, I've been saying that for the past month, but there's really no breakthrough with Arik Armstead and his injuries. So it's kind of worrying a little bit, of course, because, obviously with him being out for these, last month of football, he's been getting much needed rest for that foot and knee, but at the same time, like this number 1 bye or this number 1 seed and getting that bye week is massive for guys like Arik Armstead. Again, it's just an extra week of recovery. With Arik Armstead, though, I mean, he's going to be getting almost, at this point right now, it's going to be almost 3 weeks full of rest that Arik Armstead will get before, obviously, the playoff game, the divisional round playoff game. So, obviously, the hope is that he's going to be able to return then, but we're just going to have to kind of see how that goes. Hopefully, there's no setbacks in the recovery either because that's going to kill his timetable to return. I would expect him to be back at some point in the playoffs. I genuinely just do not think this is a season-ending injury for Armstead. Obviously, he could suffer setbacks. He could come back and re-aggravate that injury. Hope to God that doesn't happen. But it's a serious injury, and, clearly hints to why he's been out, the past month of football, 5 weeks almost. So, Armstead, the recovery seems to be going fine. John Lynch said some pretty encouraging things about it yesterday. So, again, we're just going to have to see how kind of he recovers and moves on from there. Ross Dwelley obviously dealing with the high ankle sprain that he suffered a couple weeks ago. He's going to be out again versus the LA Rams. Nothing severe. Again, I would expect him to be back for the Week 8 or for the divisional round playoff game. the 49ers getting this first round bye is massive for a lot of these guys being rested up and things of that nature. Like there's some key starters that clearly we're missing, and this bye week is massive for these guys to kind of heal up and recover. So and then moving on to Ambry Thomas. Now this is a pretty interesting story with Ambry Thomas. So he suffered a broken hand versus the Baltimore Ravens. Now he could have very well sat out and got surgery right then and there after that game and following that game. He actually went up to the coaching staff and told them that he wanted to play versus the Commanders and that he was just going to put a cast on his hand and be ready to roll. And he actually did exactly that. Ambry Thomas played last week versus the Commanders with a broken hand, and he's now going to be undergoing surgery to obviously repair that broken hand. He is expected to be back for the playoffs, though, so Ambry Thomas is not expected to miss the remainder of the season at all. He's going to be back, which is very big, because obviously the Niners secondary is already kind of hurting with injuries. And, with him, like, we don't need Ambry Thomas to play this week, and then obviously he's going to get that first-round bye week, so that's huge. That's massive and huge for his recovery as well. So that's good news on Ambry Thomas, but tough gesture by Ambry Thomas to suit up and play last week. He definitely didn't need to. He could have very, very well got that surgery as soon as he broke that hand, but he didn't want to, man. He said, screw it, I'm going to suit up and play, and that's exactly what he did. So obviously at some point in time you got to get surgery on that broken hand. So he's doing that this week. So it's going to keep him out for obviously this Week 18 game, but again, he's going to be expected to come back during the divisional round playoffs or at just some point during the playoffs. And then starting safeties, obviously Jair Brown and Tashaun Gibson. Jair Brown has that knee injury that he suffered last week. Doesn't seem to be too serious at all. But again, I mean, anytime, like the Niners are playing in a game where there's not a lot at stake here, so you might as well give Jair Brown rest. And it seems like that's kind of what they're doing with Jair Brown as well. And two, like we already have Hufanga out. Jair Brown's Hufanga's replacement. So if Jair Brown's not suiting up, it's going to be Logan Ryan. So Logan Ryan's for sure, without a doubt, going to be playing in this game versus the Rams. Tashaun Gibson has a quadricep injury. Also not expected to be serious. But those guys are and have been ruled out for the 49ers for the season finale game. Now, again, with Jair Brown, Dwelley, Tashaun Gibson, and Ambry Thomas, I would all expect those guys to be ready to go for the divisional round playoff game. And then moving on to questionable. So guys going into this game is questionable. Jon Feliciano has a back injury. He's listed as questionable. Ray McCloud dealing with a rib injury. His practice window just opened just this week, so he is actually expected to play play for this game, or play during this game, but he's just going into the game as questionable just in case. Danny Gray has a shoulder injury. He's been listed as questionable. And then Jauan Jennings, still dealing with the concussion. He's listed as questionable as well. So seems like all of these guys are, I guess Ray McCloud and Jauan Jennings, those guys are coming along pretty well, which is good news. Jon Feliciano, I don't know if the Niners will play him or not. To be honest, I could see them ruling him out just to rest him. If it's a little too serious, and if the pain's too much for Feliciano, I guess, they could very well rest him. I would emphasize resting him no matter what, personally. If he's already dealing with a back injury, no point in, risking something a little more serious. So I'm not the coach, though. Those decisions are obviously up to Kyle, so we'll see what he does with Feliciano. But that's the current 49ers injury report going into this Week 18 game. So just to recap, Eric Armstead, Jair Brown, Ross Dwelley, Tashaun Gibson, Ambry Thomas, and McCaffrey are all ruled out, along with Brock Purdy as well, but he's not on the injury report, of course. His is just rest. They're just going to rest him. And then questionable guys, Jauan Jennings, Danny Gray, Ray McCloud, and Jon Feliciano. So that's what we know up until this point for injuries. Again, a lot of these guys that are currently on the injury report that are listed as questionable, I would expect some of these guys not to play just, for a cautionary type of thing. But we'll see what happens. Like, I can't ever read Kyle Shanahan when it comes to things like this. Like, he emphasizes rust over rest. And he doesn't like resting players too many times or too much, I guess, and then obviously come in that playoff game and play rusty. So I get what Kyle Shanahan is saying, but at the same time, some of these guys that are injured we're going to need for these playoff games. Some of these guys that are, I guess, going into this game as questionable, we are definitely going to need for playoff games. So, that's the injury report up until this point, though. So we'll see what kind of happens with some of these guys being listed as questionable going into this game. But yeah, with that being said, as always, go Niners, and I'll see you guys in the next one.